Yeah.
My fiance just got her master's from CU Boulder, so
Oh, nice.
spend a bunch of time.
I did some with the dance department there.
She was in
So
the dance department.
wow,
Yeah,
it
how long ago was that?
it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Was it some dance festival, the San Soci or something?
Okay, yeah, she was probably there.
And you should ask her. I actually we're doing Ableton. I looped myself on flute while all this. I was one out of like three live music acts there though. So
Cool. Do you know Jesse Mano by any chance?
sounds familiar.
He's their like dance guy. He does a lot of like he does their accompaniment for a lot of their dance classes. But
Oh,
does
okay.
also like live looping, like improvisation with dancing.
Oh,
There's
that's
like
cool.
yeah,
I don't.
there's
I may have met him, but I don't really know him.
okay.
Small world.
Yeah, it's a small world. The dance and music world, like the places where those two worlds intersect is like pretty small.
And I think our Kevin Bacon in common connecting everybody might be Seraphin, who I want to give
Yep.
a shout out to. Seraphin Sanchez, Ableton's brand manager, who makes a lot of awesome connections in the music world and education world. Sorry you couldn't join us today. I know I saw a post. He was fine tuning his saxophone, which I always learn about saxophones through him. And they were doing this thing to a saxophone where they were shining a light and just adjusting and grinding the metal so that the caps would close perfectly. And it's really interesting.
The leak light. Yep, best. I don't know if you know that, Alberto, but that was my principal instrument, saxophone.
I didn't know that.
Oh, nice.
So when he comes down and visits, we just talk sax. You know.
He's
uh,
a Barry sax, right?
I think he did them all. I think he
Okay.
alto, tenor, and barry.
Do
Yeah.
you have
So
a one that you prefer to play?
not really. I have an alto and tenor, and it's either one
Hmm.
works.
That's cool. Well, welcome everybody. We're live, so I want to thank everybody that's on screen. Feel free to be on screen, off screen, whatever's comfortable. This is your user group. If you're in Austin or away from Austin, I want to thank you for joining us today. This is our first meetup of 2021. We have an awesome guest joining us from Colorado, Zaak Kerstetter. He's a fantastic instructor and fellow Ableton certified trainer. Zaak?
Hello. Hey, how's everybody doing today?
Yeah, and he's going to be talking about some effect updates in Ableton Live 11. I'm going to be showing you some fun stuff I'm doing in Live 11 as well. But before we do that, I wanted to encourage everybody to find a way to participate either through the text message here in Zoom or through posts, in the comment section of wherever you're watching this, because we'll be setting up a giveaway. Anybody that asks a question or share something constructive about making music or Ableton, it doesn't really have to be too specific. We'll get put in a drawing. We'll spin the wheel of names at the end of the session, and we'll have some nice Ableton swag to give out. We've got some hoodies, t-shirts, which are always cool to have. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions, we usually like to open it up at the top. If you have any Ableton issues that you're dealing with, any questions about 11 or troubleshooting things that you want to talk about, feel free to just ask through the messages, and we'll pass that on to everybody. Somebody's asking actually right now. Giselle's asking, do they offer online classes at Catalyze Academy? I couldn't find much info on the website, and Catalyze is Zack's
Yes,
online
that's
teaching
me.
platform. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
I'll let you take.
that gives me a good chance to plug my new school. Um, so I am an Ableton certified trainer, and I've been teaching live for almost a decade now. And in the past, I've always worked for other educational institutions. And just recently, I kind of quit my job and started my own school from scratch a couple months ago called Catalyze Academy. You can check out catalyzeacademy.com or our YouTube channel where I'm putting up a bunch of free like tips and tricks videos and content up there. But yes, I am planning on offering some classes. There's some basic info about the classes. I'm looking to start running them in March. Right now, I'm focusing primarily on just kind of like building the business from the ground up. And I'm mostly doing private, like one-on-one lessons. But definitely keep an eye out on the website. There's going to be more info about the classes I'll be running, as well as the schedule for when those will actually be starting.
And Zack, maybe you can speak a little bit about, the freelance jump, because I think a lot of people in this group are in that place where we all have maybe a 9 to 5 and we have this talent, this passion, and we want to pursue it. Do you have anything to share about that?
It's terrifying, and there is a massive learning curve. For me, the teaching and the music part is the easy part. It's the business side and making sure I'm like doing things on the back end in terms of like getting my taxes like all straightened out and like getting an LLC and all that kind of stuff was the part that's really stressful for me. So I actually had some people I reached out to get advice and help on that. So I'm hopefully doing it right on that side of things. But yeah, it's definitely a big leap, but I think for me, the first couple months were really slow and a lot of work. And now I've been doing a couple months and things are starting to pick up, and it takes a lot of faith in yourself. But if it's something you really want to be doing, I would encourage people to try, whatever it is. For me, it was starting my own school. For you, it might be, something else music related, but I would encourage people to try it out, especially right now, because the world's so crazy. Might as well take advantage of, how things are shifting and changing.
Really good advice. I'm going to post a link to Catalyze. It's catalyzemusicacademy.com for those watching, but you should get it in your post.
Yeah, and check out the YouTube channel. That's where I'm putting up a lot of content right now.
Awesome. Do you have a support system? Do you have a team that helps you run the school and create your content, or is it a one-person operation?
Right now, it's pretty much just me and then some people I reach out to for advice. So I'm filming all my own videos and editing all my own videos. In the past, I would film my own videos and somebody else would edit them, which is really handy. So I have people that I can call who are professional video editors who give me advice on how to edit my videos faster. But nobody who's on staff. It's just mostly friends that I've accrued over the years who are giving me advice and feedback on how to do a better job. That's
cool, man. I'm sure you're going to attract a lot of talent and just grow the Catalyze community into something big. Because Zaak's a really good community builder. You've helped kind of establish some schools in Colorado, right, in the past?
Yep. Yeah, and I ran the Boulder user group for a long time. I'm currently not running it, but I'm probably going to get involved in that again soon. But I used to run monthly meetups like this in person, where we do different topics every month, and it's all about building that community, which is really important.
That's awesome. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into some demos. And remember, guys, if you have any questions, hey, Michael, I just saw you pop in. Thanks for joining us. Oh, two Michaels. Welcome, two Michaels. If anybody has any questions, feel free. This is your user group. We really know that it's a lonely journey making music and making art, and a community helped me personally in my life to overcome a lot of those obstacles. So we want to make this a platform for that. And if you have any troubleshooting, any issues, any tech things, there is no question too simple. That's another thing I like to encourage. People feel a little judged sometimes for asking questions, but this is not a place of judgment. We are getting a question from Giselle. She wants to know, let's see. Oh, so she's saying we can make really amazing effects racks with Ableton Live devices. Do we really need plugins? And anybody can chime in. Zaak, I'll let you answer that too if you have any input on that.
I have mixed feelings about plugins. I spent many years acquiring all the plugins I could, just devouring all the tools, spending a lot of money on things that I didn't necessarily need. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I've really trimmed down my plugin usage. So there are a handful of the chosen few that I really love. Shimmer being absolutely one of my all-time favorite plugins. That's my Desert Island plugin, Shimmer by Valhalla. However, most of the processing that I want to do, I can do with live devices. So I'm probably 95% in the box live devices, whether it's Wavetable and Operator for my synthesizers, or using all the effects and effects racks. There are definitely certain situations where plugins help me kind of break my creative habits that I get into. Sometimes I find that once you make something cool, the urge is just to repeat, rinse and repeat that. So sometimes it's good to go to a third-party plugin, and that helps me kind of think about a sound in a different way, because there's a different visual aspect to it, there's different features to it. But yeah, I don't think you need plugins, but I think if you want to get some diversity of sound and experiment with different kinds of interfaces, I think interface design is a really fascinating part of plugins and music production. But I wouldn't say you would need them necessarily.
I agree. And hey, Spencer, haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for joining us. I heard somebody recently say there's two groups of people that use stock plugins, and it's the brand new users and the super pro audio people. And that made me think that it's probably, there's some truth to that. Plugins are awesome, but I feel that if you dive into the rack presets, especially in live, you can almost see the recreation, right? I think live devices are building blocks, and racks are ways to connect the building blocks to where you can really recreate some of those. I've seen people create stereo with devices, things I wouldn't really imagine would be possible in live. But yeah, I think they're cool, but I don't think they're completely necessary, especially if you've got a robust collection in Suite, which I think with Max for Live just opens the door to all these other sounds and possibilities.
And specifically talking about Shimmer, so the plugin Shimmer is this really beautiful kind of abstract sounding reverb that does a bunch of like pitchy things to your reverb. There's a new mode in the new hybrid reverb called Shimmer. Yeah. It does sound different than the Shimmer plugin. They both kind of do similar kind of processing, but I played with both a lot because I really like reverbs. And you'll get different results even though they both have similar kinds of processing.
Yeah, but really good question. And I think that's really on point because Zaak's going to be talking about effects. I'm going to be showing you a little bit of a rack hack that I came up with in 11. So I'm going to share my screen. And can everybody see that? Great, thanks. And I'm just going to do a really quick sound check. Oh, as always, forgot to share sound.
Happens every time.
Raise your hand. I do this 20 times a day, and I will forget 20 times a day. I'll just let this play a little bit. Just a little loop I made. I've been really having fun. You know, when you get a new toy, like a new piece of gear, and that exploration phase is the funnest phase. It's almost like the peak of your relationship with that thing. And then, you know, as that excitement wears off, you have to work on making things. And it felt like that honeymoon period with Live 11 is still going strong. It's very simple and easy for me to just get there and feel inspired to try something new or experiment. And then it feels like that like space that they created in 11 to experiment is leaning more towards the musical than the weird. So even if you try to go out there and come up with weirder sounds, it's very easy to make musical choices. And something that I've been just kind of discovered by accident was adding, so there's a new device called Spectral Time. And Spectral Time is a new delay effect that basically can have the ability to break down incoming signal and in the delay process create these very lush, textural, or even destructive sounds. And part of the controls there is a shift knob. So the shift knob lets you, as you would think, shift the delay sound. So something that I started thinking was if I use a really short delay time and then use that shift knob, I can kind of turn it into a pitch shifter. And then I started putting it on a kick. So let me show you what the kick sounds like without. Pretty straightforward. I'm using DS Kick. DS Kick is another thing I love about 11 is that they're taking all these Max for Live ideas and kind of legitimizing them and putting them in the browser. So now if you go to Instruments, you can go to the drum synth collection. That's what DS stands for. And you have the ability to make these drum synth sounds like a kick, a clap, hi-hat. And it's great. We had Sarah Landry last year on the stream, and she was doing some really cool stuff with it. You can stretch the decay. You can play with the pitch envelope. You can tune the kick. And you can, you know, do all sorts of interesting things with drive and really fade out the attack. And as you know, having pitch attached to a percussive instrument is really useful in recreating a realistic percussive sound. If you strike a drum head, the drum head, you know, almost like a liquid undulates and stretches and ebbs and flows, and that creates a pitch variation. And it took me a while. Somebody once told me, you know, it's all in the envelope. So it took me a while to understand that. And it depends where you're applying the envelope. But if you're applying it for example, to the pitch of a percussive instrument, it's really going to help it stand out in the mix because our ears aren't just going to hear this consistent thud. They'll hear something a little bit, you know, closer to a percussive instrument. So let's get this a little bit closer to where it was. Less decay. And let's bring the attack back down. Cool, so it's just a kick now. What I did was build a rack with an envelope follower. Envelope follower is another device that used to be considered a Max for Live device that sort of snuck its way in, I believe in 8, maybe 9, and now it's in the audio effects section. So audio effects is now organized by folders in 11. There's a modulators folder, and the modulators folder has LFO, shaper, and envelope follower. And they're just ways to modulate things that aren't just inherently have a modulator in live. So, for example, if I turn on this rack, every time there's an input from the kick, you can see the waveform come in. And the way I mapped it to the rack is this intensity knob increases the gain. So you can see the envelope really get intense, or we can pull it back. And then the rest of the parameters are mapped to spectral time. So as you can see, spectral time has the shift knob moving, and I can control the rise and the fall of the envelope. So we can get really extreme sounds. Let's play with the rise and fall for a bit. And let's drop the delay. So the shorter the delay, the closer the pitch change is going to be to the kick. And we can kind of delay that pitch effect till later. We can stretch the fall. And it's kind of cool to get the visual feedback of the envelope responding. So let's do a short rise. Right, you can get a lot of different sounds. Spectral time also has all these really cool controls at the bottom: tilt, spray, and mask. And they are influencing how the delay is impacting the low and the high frequency. So if we start messing with with the tilt, it sort of like gets a little granular, right? And then we can start increasing the spray. And then the mask is the part that either influences the lows or the highs. So you can really get out there and make your kick sound really interesting, add textures, make them sound like they're, not a typical drum sound. Or you can just really tune it down and just add that really gentle pitch change. Let's bring the tilt up. And then we can just lower the intensity. So we don't want to make it sound cartoony. We just want to make it sound less of a thud, right? So that's the thud. And then another use I came up for this was in this other drum kit. So let's play this clip here. So just another drum kit. It's got a spectral time in front of it, but in this clip, what I did was I automated the pitch in this other clip. So let's play the pitch clip. And you can see the shift knob in spectral time moving around, just making the drum beat sound a little different. We'll turn it off. Just making a sample your own or making a typical pattern. I think I even got this pattern from just one of the clips in the browser. And then spectral time also has a freeze section, and the freeze section works as you would expect it. You can press it, and it's just latching, but it also has different controls where we can sync it. And right now it's synced to eighth notes. We can sync it to milliseconds too, or we can trigger it manually. So what's happening is it's getting re-triggered every eighth note, and it's just freezing and unfreezing. And this is what it sounds like. So let's play the frozen one. We can make it fully wet. So you can add, some breath or some air into a mix like that, and you can blend it as much as you want. You can also, again, play with spray and mask, but the freeze is happening before the delay, so I don't know how much it would impact it. And then that's some interesting ways I found to use it. Of course, spectral time, you can always use it as a straightforward delay. You can work with it in milliseconds, notes, 16th triplet, or 16 dotted. So it's really versatile. You can do what you would expect with a delay, but I like that it can definitely go beyond that. So I just want to check if there are any questions. Right. And if anybody has any questions, let's see. Just really slow at reading. Sorry, guys. Awesome. So yeah, that was what I wanted to share. Live 11 is expected to come out sometime very soon. And these are all included in Suite. Something I did forget to remind you all about was Seraphin, who we mentioned earlier, did say that as a special courtesy to the Ableton user group and people that join us today, if anybody's interested in getting a push 2, we also have this is not like an Ableton thing that's on the website. This is just between us. We can message each other. A 30% discount for Push 2 for anybody that's interested just within this small group. Also want to say hi to Tom. Hey, Tom. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
Man. Yeah, I was just wrapping up my presentation, and we were just catching up on what folks were talking about in the text. And I just want to remind everybody, for questions and just participating, talking about music, we're going to put your name in the wheel of names. There's 3 drawings. We've got a sweatshirt and a t-shirt for the first prize, and then we've got 2 t-shirts for second and third. So I love my Ableton swag. Let's see, Michael Gross said, are any rumors on Push 3, or are they sticking with the Push 2 for foreseeable future? They will not tell us. Like, that's the one question that anytime anybody from Ableton gets on a conversation with a CT, it's like, when is Push 3 coming out?
I've got something to share. I would recommend people go look at the Ableton website and look at the jobs page and see what they're hiring for right now, because they're hiring for hardware QA testers for new products. And if you look at the descriptions of stuff on there, they're looking for people to test rolling out mass production of new production devices. So that should tell you something.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on it, though. I feel like one of the nice things about the Push is they keep updating it with new features. So I feel like if they can just keep updating the firmware inside the Push, they're less motivated to want to push out a Push 3 early. It'd be great. I'd be super stoked if that happened, but I would not. I think if they were going to try to do that soon, they would have tried to time that release with Live 11 maybe. But we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, and that's something I've always liked about Ableton too, is they never really make it about the product. Even if anybody's gotten to attend one of the Ableton events, they were doing a thing called Spaces, where they were setting up in small towns or cities and doing private events. And then they had Loop, which was their big meetup every year. And they wouldn't make it about Ableton. It was so awesome that they would have artists featured, doing talks, and they didn't use Ableton. They'd be using Fruity Loops or something, or just playing an acoustic instrument. And you would think it would be all about the product, but that's what I personally love about them. They're very classy about the way they don't peddle their software. They know it's really good. They know it's going to help everybody make music. So it just speaks for itself, I think.
In my dream, there's a new hardware controller they make that's like the Push, but it's just knobs and faders instead of all the buttons. That's what I want.
It does need some faders. I agree.
Yeah, I need some faders. There's no good fader controllers out there right now, and I'm really bummed about it.
I suggest a joystick too.
Yeah, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, we'll pass your suggestions on to Ableton's creative department, so put it in the chat.
The MPC's got pretty nice Ableton control, and it's gonna get better too.
Edgar's a resident MPC expert.
Nice.
Have there been any cool updates recently, Edgar?
Yeah, we just got a drum synth. Pretty stoked. It was literally like we were at 2.8, and then 2.9 was just a drum synth, and it's nice. It's got little quirks here and there. It's gonna get updated. That's kind of how they do it. But I foresee 3.0 gonna be pretty nice. Kind of crazy. I'm stoked. There might even be kind of like MPC X2. I feel like they might be rolling out something like that. It's kind of about time. They've been updating all the other ones. But yeah, I think 3.0 is going to be cool because already there's pretty nice Ableton integration, and the standalone is just out of this world. It's got all the pads are super sensitive, and you can do aftertouch. It's pretty nice. I'm sure they're going to do MPE soon.
Well, that's another update. Speaking of Push, there's a firmware update attached to 11. So when you upgrade 11, your Push gets a firmware update, and it has polyphonic aftertouch, which is not the same as MPE, but it's a significant upgrade where you have aftertouch in every single pad.
Basically per note automation, which is pretty sick.
Yeah. So Tom, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I do. I have a quick little thing I can show. It's should be pretty quick. Let me switch over here.
Absolutely.
Is the polyphonic aftertouch turned on by default once you upgrade it, or do you know?
That's a good question.
You have to. There's a button you have to hit in the setup on the push, and once you do that, it works.
Okay, thanks.
It took me forever to figure that out.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, what I'm going to demo is using the Pitch Loop 86 device, which is a new Max for Live device in Live 11. It's really interesting. It creates some really cool sounds, but I found an interesting way to do some sound design with it. So this set is really empty, and it just has one little drum loop right here. Can you guys hear that okay?
Can't hear it.
You can't hear it? Sorry about that. Let me switch this. Can you guys hear that?
Still no.
No.
Let's try. Sorry about that. Share sound. That's right.
Share sound strikes again. Same thing happened to me.
You guys hear that now?
Yeah.
I'm hearing some like static, I think. Do you guys hear that?
Nope.
Okay, we'll press forward and then. The drum beat is just kind of give us some drums later, but the main thing I wanted to show for right now is this. This is a sample of birds and water I found on my hard drive somewhere, and if I play it here. Just kind of sounds like a stream. There are some birds in the background, but it's mainly the water stream. And I gave it a little bit of boost the gain a little bit so that it's not super quiet. It was like really quiet like this, but I just boosted it up to give us something to play with here. And this is going to work fine. So search for pitch loop. I think this was created by Robert Henke on the Ableton team, who created Granulator. Put this before the EQ. I'm just using the EQ here to kind of drop off some of the lows in that water stream. Now, to start off with, the audio comes in over here on the left, and this bandwidth setting will you can always look at the info view and see what it's doing here, but it's basically resampling it, downsampling it, and then stretching it out to change what they're calling this bandwidth setting, and it will change the tone of what you're hearing slightly. So sometimes a downsampled effect it adds a little bit of character to the sound. I would leave it at 20 here, but for some samples, depending on sample rate and things like that, this can change what you're hearing. So this mode down here controls the crossover and fade points for. It's similar to how Granulator works, where it will divide up the sample into these grains and will jump between the grain, the position of these grain points. And as it's jumping between them, this crossover button here will find optimal crossover points, so you don't have as much artifacts when you're crossing over moving the position around. So I would leave this on. And then fade will actually create mini fades between those grains as you're moving around them. It may not be that perceptible here. Let me just describe more about what it's doing, and we'll try toggling these on. So it will essentially, there's a left and a right side. The left is on top, the right side is on bottom. It splits the signals in the stereo left and right, and then sends the left right down this path. And here you can freeze and stop it from changing the position of the grains, and it just locks it right there on whatever grain it's on. Back will make it play backwards instead of playing forwards in time from on that grain point. And short, basically, if you have a long sample that you're using this for, this will shorten it down and give you a smaller range to move the granulator point over. So this can sometimes change the sound too. We'll try this out. Now, I'm going to try moving up the position and changing the segment size. Let's see here. Pitch is also something that I found for this water sample. Pitching it all the way up sounds pretty interesting. I'm going to go ahead and move up the dry wet all the way, so we're only hearing what pitch loop is doing, and we'll try turning it down in a second. So it's getting kind of cool where it goes into this kind of higher pitch sound. You can hear how there's some interesting textures in there. So when I found this, I realized, okay, I'm going to make a rack out of this and map some of these controls to macro controls to have some fun. So I'm going to map this hold, freeze thing to macro 1. I'm going to map this rate. This LFO is basically controlling the scanning of the position through the grains. So you can turn this off and have it not move. It won't move this at all. And we can turn it on in a second. So let me map this to macro 2. I'll map the position itself to macro 3. I'll map the segment size of the grains to macro 4 and the pitch to macro 5. I'll turn off vibrato for now, and this low cut and high cut pass here basically is another one of these EQs here where I can clean it up if it's got some distortion on the lows or highs. And feedback will feed the signal back into itself, back through this this loop, and create some feedback loops. And this button right here will allow you to control. You can control these parameters left and right separately, or you can have it lock the left onto the right. So if I move this pitch knob here, it will move the bottom one as well. Or you can turn that feature off by unclicking this. And so we'll get to that in a minute. So now I can use a controller or whatever to play with this here. So changing the segment size to make it really small makes it like very small grains on a granulator. And I didn't turn the depth up here. The depth is what actually makes the it is the depth of the LFO that affects the position here. So when you turn on the hold, you get some more sounds here where it locks the position of this. And let's see. So the position doesn't matter here. Oh, it seems to kind of do something. You see how it's only modulating over a short distance here? That's what is controlled by this short parameter here. So if you turn that off, it will start cutting across the entire sample range. Play with some feedback here. Some of this just sounds really good to play with. Like I would record a long series of this and just start chopping up and finding pieces of some of this that I like. Okay, so now I'm going to decouple the left and right sides here. We're going to see what happens if I start changing the modulation here on the bottom. And get some strange stuff going in your ears here. And then, you know, like I said, we could play with the dry wet, and you can kind of still hear the original sound. So it kind of, especially with natural sounds, you can kind of get this strange natural sound plus a really weird texture that's coming from the granulated sample itself. So it sounds pretty cool, I think. So, any questions about any of that so far?
Not a question, but Richard says this would be great for a sound installation in a museum, and I agree.
Oh yeah, yeah. It creates these like kind of atmospheric stuff. I mean, it can do all kinds of things. If you throw different sounds into it, it does really wildly different things. But I found natural sounds and especially water sounds, for some reason, seem to really play well with the granulation and everything. So I highly encourage you guys to experiment with this when you get your hands on the beta. It's a lot of fun. It is a Max for Live device.
Awesome job. Thanks for sharing that, Tom.
Cool. Yeah. Let me know if you guys have any questions about that. Thanks,
Awesome,
everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. All right. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions for Tom, or, you know, again, they don't have to be related to 11 or what we're presenting. Again, this is for everybody that's part of the community. If you're having any problems or stuck with anything in live, I think it's a great opportunity to learn from each other too. So don't be hesitant to ask those. But without any further ado, let's hand it over to Zaak. He's going to be talking about some effect improvements, device improvements in Live 11.
Awesome. And thank you, both Tom and Alberto. I really appreciate it. So for those of you guys who weren't here earlier at the beginning, my name is Zaak Kerstetter. I'm an Ableton certified trainer, and I've been teaching live for a very long time. And fairly recently, I've started my own online educational school called Catalyze Academy, which you can check out on YouTube, as well as catalyzeacademy.com. But like Alberto mentioned, today I want to talk a little bit about some of the devices that have already existed in live, that have received updates and changes that have kind of improved quality of life and extra functionality. So go ahead and do my screen share. Cool. You guys can all hear that? Cool. So there's only a handful of effects that have been updated. Some of them have been combined from two separate effects, or now one effect. But I want to go through these kind of one at a time and just show you not only what are the changes, but also some examples of how you can use them. Also, feel free to interject or interrupt with any questions you may have. You can either type them in chat. I think Alberto will probably read them out to me, or you feel free to just unmute yourself and ask about what's going on. So the first effect I want to take a look at is probably my nomination for most improved effect, which is the Redux. So the Redux has been around for a long time, and it's basically two effects in one. It's a bit crusher / downsampler. And these are both different ways to kind of like purposely distort your sound by reducing the audio quality. So here I've got the old one. This is the one that's been around for a long time. And then here's the new and improved one. I'm going to briefly go over the old one just so you can see what it does and how it works a little bit. So there's two parts here. We got a bit crusher here. It's just going to be turned on and off. And then as we turn this down, this is going to reduce the resolution of our volumes. So if this is playing, as I start to turn this down, you can start hearing that little hissing. And if I go down even farther, you can hear it gets very distorted. If you go down all the way down to 1, it gets really, really distorted and really loud really fast. So watch out for that. And then over here, we have a downsampler. This is going to reduce your sample rate. Normally, there are 44,100 samples per second for the most part when you're working with audio. So if you start turning this down, it adds this kind of like high-pitched hissing distortion as you turn that down. And there are two modes here, either hard or soft. They're the same thing. Soft goes from 1 to 20, and this is going to basically make it, so this is going to be every 20th sample is what you're hearing. If you switch it to hard, it goes up to 200, which again gets really distorted and kind of ugly. But can be used to get this kind of like really kind of old school, grimy, distorted sounds. If you go really high, it just kind of becomes mush. So those are your options with the old Bit Crusher. The new one, same basic idea, but like I said, extra functionality. The first big thing here is right here we have our downsampler, where as you turn this up, you get more distortion. In the new one, our downsampler is over here, and as you turn it down, you get more distortion. So same basic concept, same kind of distortion, but here it actually tells you what the new sample rate is in hertz. So we can turn this down, and you'll actually get a much smoother transition. So you turn that down or up. So you can kind of set that up to get a little bit more control over exactly how much of that kind of grittiness or distortion you want in there. On top of that, there's a new jitter button or knob. This is going to basically add a little bit of randomness to the sample rate. So as you turn this down, turn this up, it's going to randomize it, which makes it sound a little bit more kind of white noisy than just like a straight up Bit Crusher. On top of that, there's also a built-in filter where we can either have a filter before our downsampler or after our downsampler. The way this works is as I turn this down, it's basically going to be a low-pass filter. So as I turn this down, it's filtering out the high frequencies, and then it's adding the downsampler. So it maintains that, again, like very digital sounding distortion. Or you can have it be post our downsampler. Same idea here, but it's going to be filter after our distortion, which is a lot less distorted. You don't really get the same kind of like high-pitched distortion in there. This actually I think would be really cool for using for like a DJ style filter, because as you turn it on, it adds a lot of character to it. On top of that, if you're using the post mode, there's a separate filter control here. So normally as you turn this down, as you turn the downsample control down, the filter goes down with it. But you can move the filter independently here relative to the position of our downsampler. So at 0, basically the position of our downsampler and the position of our filter are the same. But if I move this up, I can have the filter be separate, either going up or going down. So that only works when you're on the post mode. So all those features are great, give you a little bit more control when working with the downsampler, as opposed to just a knob that goes up. Over on the Bit Crusher side, same basic idea here. We start at 16-bit, and as we turn this down, we're going to get that same Bit Crushy distortion. I've noticed that on the new Redux, it's a little bit more choppy. You'll hear that like the volume kind of cut up and down a little bit more often if you want it than it did on the old one. If you want to make it sound a little bit smoother, you can turn this DC shift on. And you can hear it's a bit more white noisy, but there's a smoother transition where here it's a bit more choppy. You can also adjust the shape. I'm not exactly sure how the shape works. It sounds like it adds like a little bit of an envelope to the amount of bit crushing you're getting here. So it kind of like fades in over time a little bit. Like that. And then lastly, the big major feature here that they've added that I absolutely love is just a dry wet control. On the old Bit Crusher, there's no dry wet control. So if you wanted to do dry wet, you could like build a rack out of it and like do a dry wet in your rack. But here it's just built in. This is really handy because oftentimes the Redux tends to be a little bit too over the top, tends to be a little bit too noticeable. So by just turning on the dry wet, you can get just a hint of that distortion, a little bit of that grit without being like totally coloring your sound and distorting the whole thing.
Zach, there's a conversation in the chat about the absence of the hard soft button, like the old one did. Is the downsample and Redux all inclusive in the rate knob is the conversation that's going on.
Yeah, so down here, it's like a different way of thinking about it. Here it's choosing how often you're skipping your samples, whereas here it's just actually telling you the rate. So if you want to get the same amounts of downsampling as all the way up to 200, you can definitely do that by just turning this all the way down. there's not going to be like a 1-to-1 ratio. It's like, unless you do a bunch of math, you're not going to be able to figure it out off the top of your head. But you can definitely kind of like just earball it. I actually found that sometimes when I'm doing my sound design, I like to have my downsampler around like 28. I thought was like the sweet spot on like a saw wave or something like that. And I found that like right around here gets you about the same amount of downsampling. But I just kind of did that by testing out and using my ear. Does that kind of answer the question? Hopefully.
Totally, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's like it's a different way of thinking about it, but it gets you the same results. Cool. So that is the Redux new one and old one. The other one that I think is been updated in a really nice way is the phaser / flanger, especially the phaser side of things. So I'm going to go through the old phaser again real quick just to kind of show you how it works, and then we'll take a look at the new one. So I just have a square wave like that. And I can move zoom around. And we'll take actually let's start with the saw wave. Cool. So the way to think about the phaser is it's basically going to act kind of like a comb filter, which means that it's going to, instead of having just a straight line of my harmonics here, so this is just the spectrum analyzer audio effect. If I turn this on, you're going to see a bunch of dips in volume right here. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 dips in volume. The phaser is causing that. The frequency control here, I can shift this up and down. And we'll see this 4 dips in volumes change around. And we have a feedback control here. When this is turned down, the dips are going to be pointed at the bottom and curved at the top. As I turn this up, they're pointed at the top and curved at the bottom. And you can just move that around to get all kinds of cool, interesting sounds. It also has a built-in envelope and LFO. And we can change the number of dips in volume we get with the poles all the way up to 8. And we can change the distance between them with the color. Like that. So that's like the real 30-second version of how the old phaser works. The new phaser is going to have a lot of those same options, but give you even more options. And they've changed the wording on it a little bit. So some of the names are a little bit different. And we have this nice kind of visual feedback where we can actually see where our notches are going to be. So you turn the LFO down. So in this center control is the same thing as the frequency. As I move this up and down, we'll change those dips in volume. The color control is now called spread, and this does the same thing. It's going to spread out our notches. And the notches controls the number of notches. The big difference here is in the old phaser, it only went up to 8. In the new one, it goes up to 42. So you get a lot more control in terms of how many of them are happening, which can get some like cool, really interesting sound design as you move those around, which can be really fun. Blend we'll have to come back to in a second. And then down here, we have our LFO controls where we have an amount. The LFO will automatically control the center or the frequency control. So that moves them up and down. And the feedback control here works the same way as the feedback control here in terms of adjusting whether it's going to be pointed as it's dipping down or curved as it's dipping down.
Hey, Zach, would you mind clarifying? Vivek's asking a really good question in the chat about spectrum analyzer. He was wondering if that's part of the phaser flanger effect, but I don't know if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the spectrum is just an audio effect. It's already in Live 10, and I have it way over here. The only thing I've really done here, so the spectrum analyzer is going to show which frequencies you're hearing. So we have our low frequencies down here, mid frequencies here, high frequencies over here. So when I play a note, it just displays them, which is really handy for doing this kind of sound design so you can actually see how all of the harmonics are changing. The only thing I've really done here is I hit the arrow button next to the power, which moves it up top. And that way I can go over here and look at other stuff, but still be able to see all those frequencies. The other really handy thing about it is if you mouse over it down in the bottom left corner, it tells you the frequency in hertz, the nearest note, as well as the volume. So as you move this around, you can see right here, this little harmonic is at around 263 hertz, and it's a MIDI note C3.
Okay.
So that's all I'm doing there. Yeah, like I said, really handy tool. I'm a very visual learner, so for me to be able to like hear something is one thing, but be able to hear it and see it at the same time makes it a lot easier to understand what's happening.
Right.
So yeah, so we got our LFO, same basic LFO controls. However, if we hit this little triangle right here, we have even more extra LFO controls. So in here, we have a bunch of LFO shapes, including some really interesting LFO shapes that we don't get anywhere else in live, like a kind of stair-stepping triangle, like that, and a bunch of cool ones. There's like an even more finite one, or one like that. We also have phase controls, so we can have left and right stereo phasing. And here you can see the blue and yellow move separately from each other. Let's turn this up. So you can get some cool stereo phasing controls. We also have a spin mode where they will be offset from each other. For some reason, I don't know if this is a bug or not, but they haven't updated it. When you change the spin mode, the diagram here doesn't change. But this works the same as the phase and spin mode in the LFO that already exists in the phaser. There's also this really cool duty cycle control, which will shift your LFO up and down, kind of stretching it in either direction. This is really cool because you get these very strange, weird motion with your LFO, which is really cool. Let's go reset that. On top of that, there's a blend control right here. The way the blend control works is that at 0, your left and right side move up and down, or sorry, everything moves up and down together. So just moves left and right. As you turn this up, instead of moving left and right, it moves from the center to the outside. You can see everything shifting there when the LFO is turned on. You can also turn this down to get somewhere in between. It does a little bit of both, which is kind of cool. And then there's also another LFO. This extra LFO has a separate rate, and it's going to apply based on the rate of your regular LFO. So you can have 2 LFOs with different rates. So you can make your LFOs move up and down all kinds of weird ways. Other than that, the other really cool feature here that they've added is a warmth control. A few effects have this. This is supposed to add like a little bit of like analog distortion. However, I'm not in love with it so far. I've had some interesting results with it. You can try turning up and see what happens. See, it messes around with some of these high frequencies up here. I've never really noticed it make a huge difference so far in my experiments, but I'm glad it's there, and I'm curious to try it out even a little bit more. Any questions about the phaser before I move on to the flanger?
I'm just curious, man. I probably already imagine how this could have happened. How did you get the old effect on the new one? Did you build the set in 10?
I went back into my core library of 10, and I just found the old one and dragged it in there. Yeah,
it's really cool demo for demo purposes. I hadn't seen anybody done that.
Yeah, I think it's helpful, especially if people are not super familiar with the old phaser, to understand how that works, so that the new phaser makes more sense. Yeah, so that's the phaser. And then we have the flanger, which is available over here. The flanger hasn't really changed that much in terms of features, except for the new LFO options. All of the LFO options, all of this area over here, stays the same whether you're on the phaser mode or the flanger mode. But in terms of features and what it does, we have our delay time and our feedback. We have our delay time and our feedback. And we have our LFO controls amount and rate, just like we have our LFO controls amount and rate over here. So functionality-wise, besides the LFO, there's nothing really new here. But if you guys want to think about a phaser, it's basically a delay where the timing is changing. So you're going to hear that pitch change with it. So that's what the flanger is doing. And we can, of course, change those controls here. But if you're used to how a flanger works, there's nothing super new besides you can do like the cool weird shapes in your flanger. You can see it jumping around. Speed this up a little bit. So you can do some really fun stuff with it that you straight up just couldn't do with the old flanger. The other new feature is the doubler. The doubler is basically a flanger, except for the maximum timing on your flanger is 20 milliseconds. So it's a really, really fast delay, essentially. The doubler is the exact same thing, except for the minimum time is 20 milliseconds, and the maximum time is 150 milliseconds. So the idea behind this is you basically take something like a drum loop or some percussion and turn on the phaser. In fact, let's try it on this drum loop we have over here to make it sound like there's multiple, in this case, drum beats happening at the same time. Which can also do some really cool, weird, trippy delays. but at smaller amounts. Some fun sound design with it. But if you kept it pretty subtle, the idea is that it just sounds kind of like multiple people are playing drums at the same time, and one's kind of like slightly delayed off the other one. But that is the new phaser flanger / doubler. Really handy device. The phaser was already one of my favorite devices in live, so I'm really glad this got some nice cool updates to it.
Yeah, man, that was really cool. What's a use that you like to use the doubler for specifically? Or have you found yourself dropping it into stuff?
Mostly for like weird psychedelic sound effects is my favorite use for it. Like it's pretty easy just to crank the settings really high on the doubler. And get this kind of stuff. The more kind of like realistic real world example where I might use it is on like a vocal sample to make it sound like kind of like a little, not quite a harmony, but like there's multiple people singing at the same time, kind of like beef it up a little bit. But that would be like with way toned down settings. But yeah. My favorite uses so far is like really over the top weird stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really good for that.
We actually have a question from Spencer. And this is going to be a good one. I wonder if anybody else in the group has a good answer for this. He's asking if there's a native octave plugin in live. He was listening to Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, and the bass has it, and it makes it sound so cool, he says. Tom, this is open to anybody in the chat, because I know there's not an official octave device, but there are ways to get pitch effects in live. Does anybody have one they want to share?
I mean, if you're working with MIDI, you can just use the pitch control. Otherwise, you probably have to use the frequency shifter, and that seems like a lot of work to do that. Or you could use some kind of resonator, like either Corpus or the actual resonator, or the new spectral resonator, and do some weird pitch stuff with it.
I've seen folks also use grain delay for pitch stuff. You can always also copy the clip, Spencer, duplicate the track, and pitch the track up using one of the different modes. I always find that works for a quick octave hack. And if not, there are third-party plugins. One of them doesn't. Nothing's coming to mind, but I know there are a lot of pitch bending plugins out there where you can do real-time pitch bending on audio coming in. But if I think of something, I've got your email. I can send you one of them. I just can't get one off the top of my head. Oh wait, sorry. We're getting some. So grain delay from Richard, and then Giselle said there are some free Macs. There are some Macs for live devices. I'm sure there are. If you think of any, feel free to paste the link here. And then Michael saying, Ubique L. Is that how you pronounce it, Michael? It's a frequency shifter.
It's like Ubique L or Ubique G. I think it's an all-in-one plugin called Ubique. It's like $150, but they have a pretty cool frequency shifter on it.
And that would do octaves.
Yeah, you can go, I think, 48 semitones up and down, maybe more.
Wow.
Cool. The other thing you could do, as Alberto mentioned, is just do the transposition control within the actual clip itself. However, the warp mode you use when you're using transpose makes a big difference. If you try it on like beats mode, it might not sound right. I usually recommend, if you're going to be doing a lot of pitching up and down of audio, put it on Complex Pro work mode, and that'll generally get you the best results. On top of that, play with the performance control, because it'll sound totally different. So this is that same drum beat, pitched up an octave, versus this. It's not too different on this example, but on things like vocals and things like that, it actually makes a huge difference in terms of the sound you get out of it.
That's awesome. And then Michael Shine saying that there's some cool Antares pitch stuff, but you've got to pay for it, which is always the case. Michael Gross is sharing that texture warp mode plus messing with the grain delay introduces some cool artifacts, and those are always, I mean, I welcome those kind of strange artifacts coming in. And then Edward is suggesting the Boss Octave Pedal Emulator plugin, but he thinks it's Windows only, so that's a good lead to check out. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, so many good questions today, and also I loved seeing answers from the chat, which is great. It's great to make us obsolete and have you all be the source of answers. Does anybody else have any questions for the group or for Zaak? Tom, I want to thank Zaak. That was an awesome presentation. Really good, insightful, seeing both the old and the new back to back.
if I can mention one other really nice update real quick, it'll only take 2 seconds.
Sure.
The compressor, they haven't changed it at all. However, they did add a gain reduction meter right here. So when you send something through the compressor, it actually tells you the gain reduction in decibels, where it used to never do that. This is my favorite new feature in Live 11, because otherwise you kind of had to eyeball this and kind of guess what the gain reduction is, and now it just tells you, which makes it really handy.
That is sweet. All right, everybody. So this was good. We kept time really well. We learned a lot. I'm going to share my screen again and get that wheel of names up. And I'm going to put it up for a little bit so people can see if their name's on there, if it shouldn't be, or if it should be. Let's see. I think somebody's still sharing. Let's try that again. Here we go. In the chat. And let's see. I think I lost audio. Can everybody hear me still?
Yep.
Cool. I just got some weird messages from Zoom. So these are the names, and while everybody's looking them over, feel free to message me in the chat if your name's not on there. I wanted to ask everybody, it's really important for you guys to be happy with these get-togethers and get a lot out of them. So if you have an idea of something you want to learn about, drop it in the chat, whether it's mixing, mastering, effects, composition, remixes. And Tom and I will try to find some folks to bring in that can speak to that topic. That's just something that's been on my mind. We're always trying to come up with ideas and come up with awesome presenters like Zaak that will have a lot to share. And I also wanted to let you all know that we have the next one already set up for the 27th of February. And we have a really exciting announcement. It's going to be all about MPE, which is one of the exciting features in Live 11. And we're going to have folks from Sensel. Sensel makes this controller called the Morph. It's my favorite desert island controller because the overlays on top peel off really easily, and you can just swap them out, and you can program each one of the overlays to be working on different MIDI channels and all sorts of awesome things. They're MPE enabled because they're basically just a giant pressure sensitive pad. One of the cooler things about it is you can make your own. You can use their software designer to come up with your own interface of how you'd want to interact with music, because I love this quote. Peter, one of the guys at Sensel, says, "This keyboard is a universal impediment for making music instead of a tool," which I love because it kind of is. You have to learn a lot if you want to make any sounds with a traditional piano keyboard. So they're coming up with interesting ways for you to decide how you want to interact with music, create your own controllers, and then bring that flexibility into Live.
It's really cool.
Cool. Richard's asking if there's any news about SMPTE in Ableton, and I'm kind of clueless about that. Does anybody, Zaak or Tom, know about that?
I haven't heard of any updates for that.
Yeah, not that I know of.
And Christy, I'm throwing you in the wheel.
So then, can I ask something? Does anyone know of anyone that does film music in Live?
And Michael's asking if we could start a Discord channel. I think, Tom, do you have a Discord going, right?
I do. It's called Ableton Ears. We're slowly growing it, so it's available though. So check it out. It's off of the AbletonEars.com website.
Cool. And sorry, I just realized my audio out was messed up and I couldn't hear anything. If anybody was trying to say something before, I could not hear a darn thing. So I'm just double checking people. So TMI suggesting more mixing and remixes would be cool. We'll definitely look into that. Yeah, and we're definitely accepting people outside of the Austin area. This is just, we're organizing it in Austin, but we're open to everybody else. Cool. And then do film music and Live. That's a really good suggestion, Michael. Cool. All right, so let's do the first spin. So this first spin is going to be for the first prize, for the third prize, which is a t-shirt. So let's go ahead and try this out. The first t-shirt goes to, Richard, to Vivek.
Awesome.
So congratulations, Vivek. I'm going to post my email in the chat in a second, and all the winners can send me the information that I'll need to pass on to Ableton, and they'll send you over your t-shirt.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. I think this is the first time joining us.
Yeah. This is my first time, and It was helpful. I'm a beginner in Ableton. I've been doing it for about a little less than a year, so it's good to see and learn from you guys.
Where are you joining us from?
Houston.
Awesome, H-Town. Yeah, my brother's in town from Houston this weekend.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. All right, let's do the second one. It's also a T-shirt. So let's remove Vivek and let's roll the wheel. It's the type of excitement you can only get at the Austin Ableton user group. All right, Christy, congratulations. And Christy's always showing up to Ableton events in Austin, and she's an awesome part of the community.
Thank you. Now I have a T-shirt.
Yeah, what can you tell people what you like to do in live, or what kind of work you enjoy doing?
I like to use audio recordings, like record it off my phone, and then use that to manipulate them to something weird. Kind of throw some maybe beats on it, but I really haven't been able to make like a dance jam with field recordings. But again, just kind of manipulating and making weird noises is where I'm at right now. And I've had it for probably 2 years, but again, I dabble in and then kind of step away from it for a while.
But we'd love to do a show and tell sometime too. If you all are interested in that, put it in the chat. We'd love to hear what everybody's working on too. Again, this is your platform. Thanks for joining us again, Christy.
Yeah, this is my first time, I think, in Ableton.
Yeah, you join a lot of the Data Geek workshops.
Yes,
yeah. Awesome. So let's do the third spin. So this third spin, the first two are for T-shirts. This is T-shirts and a hoodie. It's still technically hoodie weather. The hoodies are so cool that you'll want to wear them in summer too. So let's go ahead and spin that.
What color is the T-shirt?
I believe they're black.
Nice. Those are good ones.
All right, Spencer Conklin. And Spencer's been joining us since the ACC days when we were having our gatherings there. So let me...
Thank you. That's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, tell folks a little bit about what you do, Spencer.
Well, I have Ableton, and I'm a noob, so I'm basically, I just sit down, dabble with it. What I've been doing recently is just listening for maybe new sounds I'd never used before, like this echo on my voice right now. But and then listen for the music to come from the sound. And so I'll be inspired by it, maybe some different sound, and write something. So I'll let the Ableton be the inspiration behind the music I'm writing. So it's pretty cool.
It's very cool. All right, so that's our drawing. So I sent Christy, Vivek, and Spencer my email address, and you can just send me your email, your address, and T-shirt size, and we'll get that to you. But yeah, does anybody else have any questions or any suggestions for us? Because we've shared what we wanted to share, and we're really excited that you were able to join us today.
Looks like some people were suggesting show and tell as an idea too, so we can do some community show and tell.
Yeah, maybe we can do that. We can do a combination next month where we do a little bit thing from Stencil and then open it up for show and tell. So definitely, yeah. So let's just kind of plan on that. If anybody here wants to bring some sets or some show and tell stuff, we might not have time for everybody, but we can definitely make it a recurring thing where part of the Quest Q&A section would be showing us your work. That would be awesome, and we'd love to learn from you.
And it can be anything. It could be gear or, just something cool in your studio or whatever you're doing, some workflow. It's pretty open-ended.
Yeah, and then just bear with us. We'll probably find better and better ways to organize this and maybe a sign-up sheet or something. But we'll try it out next month, and we'll just go from there and adjust accordingly.
So, man, I really appreciate you guys having me out here. Hopefully that was helpful and you guys learned something. If you guys have any questions about live, whether it's Live 11 or otherwise, feel free to reach out or check out my YouTube channel or just be in touch. I love helping people out.
Yeah, let's give Zaak a round of applause. That was great.
Do you put your YouTube channel in chat?
I will right now.
Yeah. Yeah, don't forget to visit, for those of you who join a little later, Catalyze Music Academy. I'll share that link, and Zaak will share his YouTube channel. And he's a really good instructor. He's really active in the Boulder area, and he's back in Colorado. So if you're in that area, look him up.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks a bunch, Zach. Man, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let's stop the stream officially.